This is Inside Mside, your favorite podcast for all things Morningside. Here's stories from students, alumni, faculty, and more about what makes the Morningside experience so special.
Welcome to this episode of Inside Mside. I'm Erin Edlund, Vice President for University Engagement, and today I'm joined by my boss, President John Reynders, and my colleagues Terri, who's Vice President for Student Life and Enrollment, Ron Jorgensen, Vice President for Business and Finance, and our recently retired Provost, Bill Deeds. I have only had the privilege of being part of this dynamic team for about 4 years, but the four of you have worked together throughout John's tenure, and together you have more than 100 years of combined service to Morningside.
Wow.
Wow. I think we all know that's an impressive number by any stretch, but anyone who knows higher ed knows that that length of tenure is just not common anymore. Teams like this are not common anymore. So today I want to talk a little bit about what has helped you work together as a team, stay together all these years, and discuss some of your successes as a senior leadership team and as individuals. So let's get started by having each of you talk a little bit about who you are personally and professionally. Ron, let's start with you.
Okay. Again, Ron Jorgensen, the Vice President for Business and Finance. I've been at Morningside for going on 26 years. I've just started my 25th year in January. And prior to that, I was 17 years in the banking industry. 1979 graduate of Morningside and married for 41 years and have 2 grown sons and 1 grandson. I'm a certified management accountant, a certified cash manager, and I've got my MBA degree. And then I've served 6 years on the Sioux City School Board and another 6 years in the state legislature in the Iowa House. So I think I turn myself out after every 6 years. But have thoroughly enjoyed my 25 years here at Morningside.
Bill, how about you?
I'm a traditional academic. Got my master's and doctorate in psychology. Spent a brief time as a civil servant. Went to a small college in Pennsylvania, Moravian College, where I started as a faculty member, became a department chair, became the associate dean, became the dean for academic affairs, and as luck would have it, got offered this job and came to Morningside. It was a strange situation. I wasn't sure I wanted this job, but I met John and he talked me into it. So I've been doing this for a long time. I was at Moravian for 19 years and at Morningside for almost 20 years. So I've got a little bit of that 100 years experience. My area has always been psychology. I've been married for 43 years. Have 2 sons and a grandchild on the way. And then have also, like Ron, just enjoyed being part of the experience at Morningside. There have been such neat transformations and enhancements to Morningside College in the time that I've been affiliated with it.
Yes, absolutely. John, you want to do a brief background?
Sure, brief background.
Yeah.
I've been in higher education for 42 years, 22 at Allegheny. I'm anything but traditional. I started as a basketball coach. I was a junior high coach and math teacher for 2 years, and then a high school math teacher and coach for 2. And I was lucky enough to be hired as the head basketball coach at where I attended school, Allegheny College, both as an undergrad and grad student. And my coach hired me back as he became athletic director. He hired me to be the head basketball coach. So at 25 years old, I took over an incredibly talented basketball team. I always look back on it in that I was 25 years old and my players were 21 and 22. I was very fortunate to have cooperative young people playing for me because they could have just abused me and they didn't. And 10 years into my coaching career, I was doing other things. What my provost Andy Ford called Dean for a Day. I was teaching some math courses, doing lots of stuff, and one day he said, probably time for you to try something different than coaching. And so I moved into the administration, and for a whole variety of reasons, he kept giving me more and more things to do until I ended up being treasurer, CFO, in charge of enrollment. I don't think there are many things in a college campus that I didn't get the opportunity to do hands-on do at Allegheny. And then one day, a search firm, a good friend of both Bill's and mine by the name of Herman Collier, happened to call me and say there was a presidency in Iowa that was open. I had never been to Iowa. And so I flew to Omaha. Terri, I think you were on the search committee.
I was on the search committee.
And I flew to Omaha, as I recall, and interviewed in Omaha, one of 8 or 9, I think, that they interviewed back then. And absolutely loved the people that I interviewed with. But went home thinking, you just don't hire old college basketball coaches as residents. And I remember getting home, and the next day or two, I got a phone call from Herman saying that I was one of the 3 finalists. And I was very excited. Came back out, had 3 marvelous days here, fell in love with the place, and went home hoping. I just knew in my heart that the fit seemed really, really good. And I was lucky enough to be offered the job. And it has been the most 22 wonderful years professionally that I could have ever hoped for in my life. And a lot of that reason is these 3 characters sitting here. It was never a job, it was a way of life. And we worked together to, I think, make some pretty substantial changes at this place and made it a better school for kids. And we all shared that same sense of values of wanting this to be a really special place for students and turn out students that were difference makers. And the 4 of us, and later you, we all just worked arm in arm to make this a special place. So I've been very, very fortunate. I've had a wonderful career. Yes, I better say this. I'm married to Robin. We have 3 sons, 2 in a former marriage for Robin and 1 for me. She's been a very important part of what's happened here at Morningside as well. It's been fun doing this as a team, and that's what's made it even that much more special. So, enough.
Last but
follow
certainly
that,
not least,
Yeah.
Terri.
I've been taught many times not to follow the president, but
Here
yet
you
here
are.
I am. That's right, here I am. Terri Curry, and I have been at the institution 36 years. Started as a live-in hall director in Dimmitt, worked in residence life, and as all three, and Erin will share also, the best part of being at Morningside are the students and the difference we can make in their lives. And part of that difference is they may not notice that till they're graduated and out here, away from here 10, 15, 20 years. But when you know that you're making a difference, 36 years certainly has been just absolutely pure joy. I agree with all of them. I don't see this as work. We get to come and do things we love every day and certainly do make a difference on that part. I am married. My husband is Kevin. We live in the country in Elk Point in South Dakota, and we have 3 adult children. And Morningside has been a huge part of their lives as well as Kevin's. And we have a new daughter-in-law, Meg, and a soon-to-be new son-in-law, Spencer, who is also a Morningside graduate. And it just truly has been a pleasure being a part of John's vision. I think we all can agree on that. It was easy to say yes. John asked me to be on senior staff for 1 year. It turned into a few more years besides that, but it's been a great adventure. And not only here at Morningside, but for the whole Siouxland area. We've had an opportunity to make a huge impact. Our donors, our friends have certainly stepped up and made a difference at the institution by their kind and generous gifts to Morningside.
Very good. Well, let's go back to that beginning. So talk a little bit about what it was like in those early days, especially of your tenure, and what opportunities and challenges did you see before you? Whoever wants to start.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think early on, I think we all 4 of us knew there was a lot of work to be done. Our priorities were not necessarily in line with what I think the 4 of us wanted Morningside to be. We had lost our way, I think, a little bit financially with running some pretty significant deficits up year in and year out. I think there was probably an overemphasis on Division II athletics here. All the four of us, you can't find four administrators more in tune to the value of intercollegiate athletics than the four of us are, but in its appropriate place for a small school. And I think we had just lost our way a bit and overemphasized the importance of competing within what historically was a very significant Division II conference in the United States, the North Central Conference. And there was just an enormous amount of pressure to stay in that group with only 12 schools. And we weren't, other than men's basketball primarily, we weren't particularly competitive in that group. We certainly didn't recruit very many students. So that seemed, from my perspective, that was a dominating factor in the first several years when I came to campus.
Yeah. John talked in those early days about Morningside being this gem that had lost its luster. And Morningside, then college, had this rich history, one of the best small private colleges, certainly in Iowa, perhaps the country, and it had kind of lost its way and lost its focus. And I think the board, in their wisdom, saw the need to find somebody that could fix that, and found John. And again, I think all of us did buy into his vision of what we could do to restore that luster and return Morningside University to its to the level of reputation that it deserved and was capable of. And I think that's happened over the last 20 years.
Certainly to its appropriate place.
Yeah.
Of that. And earlier we talked certainly about the students, but we got to where we were certainly with John's vision, with the board's support. But we all would agree that the staff and faculty that work here, were the ones that truly bought in and made things happen. They make it happen. Yep. Staff and faculty make it happen every day on this campus for our students.
I know when I first made the decision to come here, it was from the banking industry, and so it was a whole new environment that I wasn't used to, going from the for-profit to the non-for-profit, and just how both are differently governed and stuff like that. And coming in at a time, as John had mentioned, we had been operating with multiple years of deficit, and we were still operating with a deficit. And I didn't have the luxury of coming in and having somebody mentor me in that position. I mean, I was the CFO from day one, and there wasn't anybody else there. And to walk into that type of different environment, I really questioned whether I was making the right decision or not. Finally I decided I'm going to just buck it up, and this was a challenge, and took it upon to look at it that way, and like I said, best decision I ever made. But you wonder at the start. When John came on, it was refreshing to see somebody that was willing to make the tough decisions, and had the vision of doing that, and that made it rewarding challenging to go through those times, but knowing what the problems are and developing a plan to correct them was very stimulating to be part of this group that enacted the plan that John had developed, and watch it come to fruition of the transformation of a poor-looking, tired campus to what it is today. We've invested close to $70 million over the last 25 years in the infrastructure, buildings and grounds and stuff.
Not from tuition, from equity.
Exactly,
yes,
from generous donors,
Yeah.
and those type of things, and to see the effect, as Terri had mentioned, that you have on kids' life is rewarding.
Yeah.
John came to Morningside in 1999. I came in 2000. Herman Collier, who John referred to earlier, was the president at Moravian College when I started there as a faculty member. He retired and we went through some other presidents, and he became a headhunter, and I ran into him at an alumni event, and he talked me into applying for this job. And it got to the point where I was really interested in Morningside making me an offer, and I had friends who said, boy, it's a place in some significant problems. Why would you want to go there? And I said, I've met this president. He's got a plan. I think the plan makes sense. It'll be a great professional challenge. And I think it was a neat professional challenge for all of us. I think you alluded to the fact that we stayed together as a senior staff for an incredibly long time in higher education. Unheard of. I think it's because in the beginning, we were all dealing with these really difficult decisions that we had to make. We had to stop the bleeding and turn the place around. And I think we bonded during that and developed, effective working relationships. I think Terri and I particularly got the focus on students that Morningside needed to have, and made academic affairs and student life in sync for the first time in a while. And that was important.
Yeah, and that's actually a perfect lead into my next question, which is how you went about building that sense of camaraderie among you, because you were put together. You came together at the beginning of this. You were facing these challenges. So Bill's talked a little bit about that, but what were some other ways that you really built that sense of team and camaraderie among you?
Well, what I do think when you all know that there's a small battle going on around you and that you may be making decisions that aren't popular, you find out as a team. And you work together as a team, and we weren't necessarily insular, but we really did depend on each other to have each other's back, that we needed to stick to a plan. And I think after a while that you just become friends. You're more than colleagues. We spent a lot of time together on that part, and it's just hard not then to have respect for your colleagues and to become good friends.
John's experience as a coach was helpful here. I think he did a lot of team building with the senior staff, and things were getting rough. He'd keep us going, say the right thing at the right time. If there were tensions that we would have, he'd notice those and talk about how to smoothen them out, make it work. And took care of us as a senior staff. And hopefully we paid the favor.
But I think, as Terri mentioned, respect. Having respect for everybody and confidence that we all know what we're doing and trusting each other and stuff, I think went a long way.
As I've reflected, and I've spent a lot of time thinking back in my last year before I retire, the three people here are the reason that what we were able to accomplish happened. And each of them brought their own specific strength to the table. There's no question that some of it's serendipitous when you find four people who can just work together and get along so well. That doesn't happen very often, but I think it was so fortunate that they brought such individual skills to the table as well, which allowed us to be successful. As examples, I think with Ron, never once, not one single time, did I have to argue or defend the integrity of the numbers.
Absolutely.
Never. That's unheard of. I think the first place that faculty or boards or staff go to is to question whether or not the numbers that are being presented by the administration are accurate. Or are their forecasts accurate? Or as you reflect upon what happened in the previous year or so, when we talk about all those deficits, did that really happen? Ron, in his year before I got here, satisfied all of that. Everyone believed Ron Jorgensen was telling the truth. And that sense of integrity that he brought to the table was so important early on as we started to talk about these difficult issues. I always thought with Bill, he had a way with faculty second to none. There was just a way that he could cajole, coerce, threaten.
Persuade.
That too. But he found a way to get faculty on board. We were dealing with some really tough, we talked about the athletic issue, but we were also dealing with a restructuring where we were letting some 16 faculty positions go because this was all part of a comprehensive plan. And so in the midst of dealing with athletics, Bill was working tirelessly at helping through this academic restructuring of the place as well. And in some sense, picking up the pieces for what we didn't know when you first got here to help us get to where we needed to be. And that carried forward the entire time Bill was here. The faculty trusted Bill. Again, not something that happens very often. And Terri never likes to hear this, but if there was a rock-solid, steadying influence to the senior staff, it was her. She was just that person every single day. You knew where her priorities were. They were with kids, and she always reminded me, don't forget the staff, which was so important. We knew part of our job in higher education is you got to take care of the center of the faculty, the center of the institution, and that's the faculty. But man, without great staff and staff that are pulling with you, that faculty won't be appropriately supported every single day. Terri was telling us about students, telling us about the staff, and making sure that we were doing the right stuff. In addition to making sure that the enrollment situation here turned itself around. Think about a college back then, a college that was struggling to recruit 175 students, okay, that is now regularly bringing in 360 plus. And all of that fell on the back of Terri, and not an area where she grew up in. I mean, she didn't grow up being an enrollment guru. She grew up learning that on the fly,
Right.
and turned this place around. So that, I think each of them, those skills that they brought to the table is why Morningside has flourished these many years.
Absolutely. Was there a moment thinking back when you all of a sudden just knew that you were part of something really special, that you were in a high-performing team and that things were really starting to gel?
No.
No?
Still not there. Yeah, when does that happen?
We're still waiting for that moment. No.
You know, in the early days, first year I was here, John held a golf outing for his
Oh
senior
my
staff.
God.
And I have a lot of vices, but golf isn't one of them. So John and Ron and Tom and some others went golfing. Terri and I went to a bar and played billiards. And I think that was the beginning of our really strong personal relationship. You know?
Yeah.
I remember speaking of the golf outing, that maybe it's the same one, I don't know, but we had a golf outing in Ponca.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Sodexo was running that tournament or whatever, but we introduced, at that golf outing, we introduced John to Midwestern fine dining. Because after the tournament, we took him to Bob's Bar and Grill in Martinsburg, where we had a big hamburger and a big plate of fries.
And the wagering on people washing their hands. This is what I'll never forget.
They're watching people come out of the bathroom.
What are the odds?
Those were the fun times.
Yeah.
And they still happen. But
I think, for me, the 2004 women's basketball team national championship was a turning point. I think until that moment, there was still a great deal of skepticism as to whether or not it was the right move. But that was certainly something community-wide that was widely embraced. But I still have a favorite story. And it's, as I've been thinking about my favorite moments at Morningside, without a doubt, it's Steve Ryan's first real live game at Wayne State when we took the freshmen down to the game. I don't remember.
Terri and I were there.
You guys were there. We put all the freshmen, all 175 of them, on buses, okay, and drove to Wayne State. And it was our first game in the NAIA playing Division II Wayne State. And we were coming off of a year where we only played club football. So it was kind of a ragtag operation.
There was a player that transferred to Wayne State from Morningside who was running his mouth before that game. That made it even sweeter.
So we go down there and the game goes into overtime. But the thing that I like the most is that the Wayne State administration put us in the end zone.
Yeah.
And so our whole freshman class is sitting in the end zone. And in the overtime, as you know, it flips sides.
Yes.
So we're down, and our whole freshman class is down here cheering like crazy, okay? And both teams score, so they flip ends. That whole class got up, toddled together down to the other end zone, and cheered like crazy at the other end zone then. And we ended up winning. We beat Wayne State. And I remember an exciting moment of all of us getting back on the buses. Steve Ryan was so smart that he sent the team onto the buses. And so the team just started going up and down the aisles thanking on the bus, thanking the kids. And I remember thinking, we might get through this after all. This is pretty cool. There was a spirit in that of what happened that night that I think was reinforced, certainly in the '04 National Championship with the women. But we knew we were on to something.
That was a great event from your perspective, but Terri and I were dealing with the peanut allergy.
Oh my goodness!
And we had a student who sniffed a peanut on the bus and had to go to the hospital.
Oh no! So that's where I was.
Yeah,
Taking care of students is appropriate.
Speaking of the football, though, it jarred my memory on. John's a quick learner, and that's one of his strong points and stuff. But I remember the very first home football game, which is typically in August, and it's 90-some degrees in the heat. And John went to the first game in a suit and tie, and he never went to another game in a suit and a tie, I don't think. But then he also, I think that was the game he was on the sidelines. Yes. And he never did that again either. So.
Well, it was that game, Ron, that I used to stand on the sidelines at Allegheny. I always wanted to be around it because I was a coach. And so I was standing down on the sidelines just like I did at Allegheny, and I was down around the goal line, and there was a play in the end zone. And I had talked to the officials before the game, just like a coach does. Yeah. And I had talked to the officials before the game, and I screamed at the official on a close call in the end zone. And the official very kindly came over to me and said, "Mr. President, I'll tell you what, it would be really embarrassing for you if I'm going to throw a flag on a critical moment in front of your very first set of fans in the stands." And I thanked him so much for being patient with me, and I went and I've never got out of the stands since. In fact, often we sit together in the stands now, and sometimes I'm just really glad I have folks to sit with so I don't ever want to go back down on the sidelines again.
Yes. I would have to echo, though, with what John said about the Women's Championship in 2004. That will always be, in my mind, the turning point as far as just so many things. Certainly from an athletic standpoint, it was. But we were then bringing in classes of much larger than 171. We were having balanced budgets. We were having a curriculum and majors that students wanted to come to the university for, and were proud to be a part of. It just brought everything together. And you all know John very well as we do. He allowed us for 30 seconds to say, yes, we're there. And then on with more plans of what else is to come next on that. But it truly was just like, yes.
That was great. It was a great serendipity because it just was lucky that the NAIA played their women's basketball national championship in Sioux City. So the team had played well all year. They played well in the playoffs. They got to the final game, and it's in front of a home crowd of 7,000, 8,000 people. Place was packed, and these were people who had sort of watched Morningside go into decline. And here was an example of one of the very first examples of excellence in all things at Morningside College. Our women's basketball team played great. They upset the team they were playing, Cedarville. I still run into people from Cedarville when I go to conferences, and I say, "Remember Morningside College?" They do, because we beat them back-to-back 2 years in a row, and they thought they owned that.
John took a lot of heat going from Division II to NAIA, and I think it was after that championship game, I didn't hear much complaining after that.
There was a synergy. There was a synergy. It was, I think we started to win, and we started to have much more success in enrollment, and there was a pride that developed, I think, in the institution, both from alumni and people in Sioux City, and that led to more fundraising, and we always talked about that wheel that we got going, and it kept building momentum, and there was more pride. Erin, when I arrived, okay, we didn't sell Morningside paraphernalia in the bookstore. I mean,
In fact, we didn't want customers in the
We
bookstore.
didn't really want customers. We sold books, and we didn't. I remember being amazed that I'd walk around campus and there were nobody in Morningside stuff. And today, you can't go anywhere without
Exactly.
people wearing, and proudly wearing Morningside stuff. So I think it was just part of getting people to be proud of where they were going to school, or people in Sioux City and our alumni proud of coming here. And then at some point we started Taste of Morningside. And that,
With homecoming.
yeah, Bill, you'll remember this. You and I went to that banquet. We used to have a banquet. So you'd go to the football game at 1 o'clock or 1:30, whenever it was on that Saturday. And then you had to race home and put a suit on, okay, on a September or October evening, and get back here for a formal banquet in the before we renovated the dining hall. And it was very formal. And there were some long speeches. I mean, long speeches. And so we finally came to the conclusion that this probably wasn't the best way to celebrate a homecoming. And we somehow came up with this idea, let's throw a big party and bring back the vendors that students knew here, like everything from Miles to Bob Rose to Jerry's Pizza and all the rest. And boy, it just took off, and it became a party. And I think that's been one of the rallying points for alums to feel good about Morningside again, too.
I agree. I think another thing that has really come along and is a rally point for the institution is also Christmas at Morningside. That has become just very important, certainly for the history of the institution with music, but for the community. People look forward to that, and the choir and instrumental music have done a wonderful job providing that kind of entertainment for not only the campus community, but for the Siouxland community.
One of the nice transformations that I've watched in my time here is when I first came here, and I would go out in the community, and I would talk to people that, well, I haven't been on Morningside's campus for a long time. And over the time I've been here, the campus has improved. It's been enhanced. We're in this facility. We have the outdoor performance center, and now this is a destination spot for people in the community. People come here to take their pre-wedding photos. People come to the outdoor concerts in the summer. People come to Christmas at Morningside, prom and homecoming. So we've become a sort of a centerpiece for the community. We've gotten awards for beautifying the campus, and that's all good.
Yeah.
Early on, we were trying to turn things around. We had to do a lot of things to improve the situation for everybody, for the students, for the faculty. One thing we did for the students, when I first got here, we had to downsize the faculty, to right size it, to make it. We did that, and we started to rebuild the faculty, and we had a curriculum that made it difficult for students to graduate in 4 years. We had to fix that. That was early on my list. We needed a curriculum that would get students done in 4 years. That's how long college should take, and like every other college this side of the Mississippi River, we tried to be like a big state school. We had 3 credit courses. The really good private colleges on both coasts do 4 credit courses. And that was what the experience I came from. So I worked really hard to get the faculty to embrace that. Took some doing. They did. And we added May terms. And we changed the curriculum in a way that required our faculty to look at everything, to look at the general education program, to look at all their majors. And so we upset the whole fruit basket and rebuilt it in a way that was student-focused, both in terms of providing them with the skills and experiences they needed to be successful after they graduated, but also getting them done in 4 years, and providing along the way experiences like May term, where we went from having a handful of students who might have had an international experience to over 100 a year. We're getting some international experience through our May term courses. It was much better, and that generated some of that enthusiasm that brought more students here and gave them a great experience.
I think between that and athletics and performing arts has allowed us also to have more international students on our campus, which adds such value
Such richness.
for our students.
And I think the growth in the grad programs over the years.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Going from numbers, we were typically generating $200,000-300,000 a year in our grad program, and now it's in excess of $5 million.
We had maybe a couple hundred part-time students there initially. Now we've got close to over 2,000 part-time graduate students. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the challenges that you all knew and understood here at Morningside, but you've also led together through some pretty significant world and national events. So at the beginning of John's tenure, you were facing the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and at the end of your tenure, you've had to deal with a global pandemic. So talk about navigating those kinds of unexpected challenges and how you worked together to get through something that was truly unprecedented.
Look at all of us looking at each other like
The resounding silence ensued. That's right. The events of 9/11, when the Twin Towers were attacked, was in my first year here, and Terri and I were going to a conference in November. This happened in September. In November, we went to a conference, and I think it was in Palm Springs. But walking into the airport then, there were people in uniforms carrying submachine guns and with German Shepherds. That was brand new. Yeah, and the security was as tight as you can imagine. It was a really strange experience and a strange time. I think our students were just taken aback by all that. It's the first time our country had been attacked, and it was.
I think for me, this year struck me when I had the first year seminar, the CIC students over to the house for our dinner that we always do. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I've ever had it reinforced more. These students were not born when that happened.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And for them, for me, the Second World War was something in the distant past. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't. And for me, sitting there with Robin, talking with these students, 9/11 was distant past. And it's funny, because they weren't born, most of them, almost all of them, weren't born when 9/11 happened. And yet to the four of us, it's as real as if it were yesterday. Mm-hmm. And as I've reflected upon what we did then, I think you're operating by the seat of your pants.
Yes.
We knew we had to look in to see if we had students. I remember you doing this. Do we have students that are from New York? Do we have families that are in New York that may have been impacted? Faculty, staff, and students. We knew we had to call a convocation together that very afternoon, and we did. Bruce Forbes did a marvelous job, as I recall, speaking on that day. But it was literally just flying by the seat of our pants, trying to keep up with what was going on from a news perspective. All of us checking on family. Yeah. You know, I had family in New York then, and making sure everyone was okay. But it was just, in some respects, like COVID, flying by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
I mean, always thinking what's in the best interest of the students, the faculty, the staff. What do they need to get over this crisis and stuff, whether it's counseling services or having face masks instituted and those type of things. I think it was centered to a lot of our decisions, just doing what's right for the people that are associated with the college and university.
Yeah. With COVID, I continue to be so proud of and amazed of our campus community. I mean, it was new to everyone, and people just wanted answers. I am pleased that it was probably 20 years into the tenure, because I do believe the campus community had faith in the administration that we would do the right things, that we would do all that we could to keep this place, keep our employees and our students as safe as possible. I appreciate the grace, how everyone allowed that grace to happen, that they knew our intentions were good. We may not have had all the answers. So grateful for my colleagues, so grateful for Siouxland District Health. What partners they were through all this with us. But truly proud of this institution and how they handled.
I so agree, Terri. And Erin, to your credit, I think your addition to the senior staff, what is it, 4 years now? I think 4 years ago. I don't know what we would have done without your communication skills through all of this.
Agreed.
Whether it was internally, which was so important, keeping our campus updated, keeping the website current, getting the information out to folks internally that needed to have happen, but also external communications, letting the community or letting our alumni know and the city know that the college was doing all we could to protect the health and well-being of the entire campus community. That was so, so important. You know, for 2 years, we met almost every Monday at 1 o'clock as our little COVID group. And every week, I mean, it was a roller coaster ride. We didn't know from 1 week to the next what we were going to be facing. And in that little group, we made some really tough decisions. From closing, sending everybody home, to opening when there were an awful lot of people who didn't think we should open in a green. Heck, you guys, I think the two of you came up with the color codes somehow.
Yes, we did.
I think that I would have never dreamt of green, yellow. I'll never think of green, yellow, orange, red again
It's
the
the same
way. But those are crazy times.
I had just retired before COVID hit,
Yes.
so but I was doing a statistics course in the spring of, was it spring of 20? And it was the time that we moved from face to face to online with all the classes, and I had about, I think, 22 students or so in there, and they kept saying, we're sure you guys are going to get through this. They had a great deal of faith in the administration, and when we made the switch, people in student services, people in finance, the institution took care of those students and supported them so that they could finish their work that semester. And the students in my class felt that.
So as you all sit here together, what's one memory, moment, or trait, perhaps, that each of you will cherish about the others sitting at this table?
I'm not sure I'm going to answer this question, but I'm going to say it this way, okay? I've made lifelong personal friends. And what I will take with me about this group is that Ron and Bill and Terri will be near and dear to my heart and close friends for the rest of my life. Not only are we colleagues and have worked together to make Morningside a better place for our students, but I think we have grown together as a group that are really special people. And what I hope more than anything as I look forward is that we will find ways to stay in touch, to get back together. Come to Florida and visit us. I'll come back to visit and haunt you people somewhere. But we're gonna. I want to really be intentional about working at that, because the relationships that were developed here are the most precious of my life.
I'd echo what John said. You know, there are a lot of single moments, but it's the gestalt of the thing, the totality of the experience. We all.
That's a psychologist for you.
It is. We all went from being brand new with each other, working out professional, collegial relationships, and those were established. We were all being very professional, doing very well, but we all became friends over time and unintentionally. It happened, and it's a great side benefit, but nothing you ever plan on necessarily in a professional career. When I talk to my colleagues at other institutions, they may have one person on the senior staff that they're good friends with, but they had a little problem with this other person on the senior staff. That's not been the case at Morningside. We've all gotten along, and we've all watched each other's backs.
I think
That's why the place has been successful.
the highs and the lows together.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, that's why we're all still here.
Yeah.
And served together for over 100 and some years is with somewhat family, getting through those highs and lows, and like I said, respecting each other and challenging each other and being honest with each other and those type of things.
I really think it is, in the end, we may not have agreed every day on every topic, but but we knew what we were going to do and what we were going to say. And I think that art is missing sometimes in life, that art of mutual respect and compromise and having each other's back. You can still win and not necessarily have it be your idea. And I think that's one of the things that I learned from this group, as in the end, I don't know that anyone was, that was my idea. The end results was, what's the institution and our students and the community, were they the winners? It wasn't like, we didn't care whose idea it was. What we cared about was that everyone won, that it was a win-win situation. And I greatly admire that we could, as a group, come to that.
One of the things I'll always remember is and I love politics and stuff, as you guys know, and just over the years of being able to kind of be the place to go with politicians and stuff. And, I remember 3 presidents that were here. George W. Bush, I think, was here
My first day.
to thank John for being president of Morningside College at the time.
My first day.
And then Barack Obama, and he wasn't president at the time, but he was president, Donald Trump was here, and then bringing all the candidates onto campus, and a lot of times going into John's office and just sitting one-on-one and visiting with them. That was fun, of being involved in that.
Very good. Well, thank you to all 4 of you for being here today and for being part of this. And thank you for all you've done for Morningside. I know I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people who really appreciate the time and commitment that you've given to this place. It's very special. And it's truly remarkable to know how much this institution has evolved over the last 2 decades. And I've really been honored to be a small part of it the last 4 years. So
A big part.
A big part of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
thanks to everyone for listening, and we hope you tune in again soon for another episode of Inside Mside.